Thank you, Adam. Thank you, everybody. I will very briefly tonight provide you with the context with which light rail would operate in the city. We know Sydney is largely a commuter city. About 400,000 trips are made into the CBD every day. It's really just a public transport city. In the centre of the city, nearly 75% of workers commute by public transport. A further 7% walk and cycle, that's mostly those living closer in, and around 17% come by private car, taxi or motorcycle. The public transport effort is in fact largest in Australia in both number and mode share, and it's quite respectable by world standards. Connecting Our City, the city's 20-year strategic transport framework, can be found on the city's website. It makes many suggestions about how to improve travel both to and from and through the city. We talk about creating options for people wanting to get to the city using other than a car, because despite the projected employment and residential growth by 2030, there'll be close to 0% growth in the space between buildings. Spatially efficient commuting, achieved with public transport, walking and cycling, will never have been so important in our history. Light rail is one way of achieving that when it reaches beyond the city centre to surrounding areas. But that is only half of the story. The transport world in the CBD looks dramatically different during the day. Then only 3% of trips are made by taxis and public transport. 93% of all internal trips in the CBD are on foot or by bike. It seems that just about everyone becomes a pedestrian or a cyclist. Why? We think it's because it's quicker, given the small footprint of the city. We also think people don't have the time to find a ticket seller. They can't work out which bus or train to catch, and they haven't got the time to wait for the service. People need reliability and frequency to be attracted to public transport, but they also need legibility to make use of it. Underground rail services are not easy to interpret. Bus trips are pretty confusing to navigate with 192 different routes in the city centre. So Connecting Our City looks at what we could do to make it better for those walking, but also how we can extend the walking reach within the city. We know from experience that walking through central Sydney is not always the most welcoming experience and deters people from walking further. In fact, the waiting time for the Green Man is so onerous that 72% of people observed by the city chose to cross the road between signals or across at red signals. Connecting Our City asks the state government to recognise the needs of the vast majority of city workers and users and commit to pedestrian-friendly signals and streets. It also advocates for a simplified, frequent and integrated bus network, as found in most other world cities. Connecting Our City also investigates a light rail network, one that provides the high-frequency, high-capacity backbone of an integrated public transport service extending across the most densely populated areas of the inner metropolitan area. Light rail in the city centre should be the beginning of that network. For the city centre, light rail brings together the commuter system and the city centre distribution. Light rail in George Street effectively doubles the walking distances throughout the city to connect more people to more places and more quickly. It allows people to explore more than the closest food court in the basement of their building, and possibly after work the closest bar. And by removing more than 400 buses per hour running alongside the curb in George Street, many only 20% full, it creates a much more inviting main street. Really, what we want is simple. We want less scurrying between sanctuaries from George Street and more enjoying the attractions along Sydney's main street. What we're seeking is nothing short of both transforming how people use the city and the very fabric of the city itself. The following speakers will reveal to you how that might happen and why. Thank you.